There's almost been a morning after the night before feeling. The rhetoric's dialed down. Everyone's talking about wanting a deal again. At one point, there are even rumours floating around about the offer of a possible Northern Ireland only time-limited backstop, which both communities would have to get behind. We spoke to Sinn Féin this morning. They instantly dismissed it, calling it a non-starter. The DUP called it economic madness. So an idea floated, ultimately floated away, though. But the important thing that's happened here today has been a meeting of the EU Parliament. Lots of voices spoke in favour of EU negotiators, a distinct lack of voices with anything favourable to say about Boris Johnson's proposals. Relative calm after the stormiest of days in the Brexit negotiations, where leaked details of phone calls and, quote, stupid blame games were yesterday. Today, is a deal possible?
Be patient, please.
Diplomacy descended once again.
In any case, the EU will remain calm, vigilant, respectful and constructive.
Do you think the British are being respectful?
The technical talks continue, and I have invited for a working lunch Steve Barclay tomorrow. That's all. Thank you very much.
Is a deal still possible?
Thank you. I think the deal is possible and very difficult, but possible.
And do you think the Prime Minister is acting in good faith? That working lunch with Brexit Secretary Stephen Barclay tomorrow became breakfast on Friday by this afternoon. And what is on the menu is decided in this room by these people, the European Parliament's Brexit Steering Group.
Do our comments in the plenary immediately this afternoon. Thank you.
What did this group tell the rest of Parliament this afternoon? This.
Et pour dire les choses simplement et franchement,
to put things frankly, we are not really in a position to be able to find agreement with the UK. And then he systematically listed why. In short, Boris Johnson's proposal would, quote, replace an operational, practical, legal solution with a hypothetical and provisional solution.
Par une solution hypothétique et provisoire.
The official stance here is that a deal is still the desired outcome. However, the line that got an applause from the chamber was this one.
And personally, I don't exclude a deal. We are, Michel and myself, working on a deal. And we are not accepting this blame game which started in London. We have not to be blamed.
The British Prime Minister wants a deal. He's put very reasonable proposals on the table and he's shown great flexibility. I'm not sure we've seen the same flexibility from Dublin or indeed from the EU, and it's not too late.
His voice today, a distinct minority. EU Brexit coordinator Guy Verhofstadt went a step further, ridiculing the UK's proposals. And at this meeting afterwards, he was preaching to his own choir. Liberal Democrat leader Jo Swinson said she was in town to let European allies know there are millions in the UK who want to remain, just a week after Downing Street sources allegedly accused Remain MPs of foreign collusion. The government are trying to negotiate a deal. You're undermining that, aren't you, by being here?
Well, first of all, the government isn't seriously trying to negotiate. It's very clear that they're, putting forward plans that are unworkable. They are insulting other European leaders. That's not the actions of a government that is serious about negotiating.
And faith in the British Prime Minister is what's needed along these corridors if the deal everyone says they want is actually to be achieved. Faith that does not appear to be abundant.
It's possible to achieve an agreement, to have a deal, but it's in the British hand and not in our hand.
Do you believe Boris Johnson really wants a deal?
I want to be optimistic also.
That's not a yes, though.
But I don't know, I am not Mr. Johnson. This question is for Mr. Johnson. You will have a good answer, I'm sure. Bye-bye.
But who is he saying bye-bye to? Us or a deal?
Paul McNamara. Well, the One Nation group of Tory MPs opposed to the party running on a no-deal Brexit election campaign took their concerns to Number 10 today. Various interpretations of their meeting with Boris Johnson have now emerged. We'll be talking to one of the MPs who was there in a moment. But first, let's go over to our political editor, Gary Gibbon in Westminster. Gary.
What alarmed these MPs was the messages tapped out from inside Number 10 by a senior source. Everyone assumes it was Dominic Cummings, the Prime Minister's chief aide, the man who shapes government strategy, saying that the Tory party would be going into the next general election on a no-deal ticket, assuming there hadn't been a deal or any kind of Brexit that had happened. Now, what they wanted was an assurance that that wasn't going to be what the manifesto said, because they're queasy about that. And they say the Prime Minister told them he had no intention of running on a manifesto like that. Now, how reassured were they really? Well, I think you can guess a little bit of that by the fact that one of their spokespeople went rushing around the studios, putting on camera, on the record, as it were, what the Prime Minister had said. I rather suspect with a view to trying to hold him to it, nail him to those words, because all the signs are that the tone of the Tory campaign, if not the actual letter of every single word in the manifesto, will be very much a no-deal Brexit campaign. That's the whole Dominic Cummings strategy that the Prime Minister seems to have bought into. The other thing we learnt today was that the Parliament may well be recalled. It's actually up to MPs to vote on this, but may well be recalled the Saturday after the European Council summit, something that doesn't normally happen. And there's a lot of people scratching their heads, gaming, what will the government do with that day? Do they have some special fireworks that they are planning if there hasn't been a deal negotiated by the time that Parliament meets then? Well, then they expect the Prime Minister will try and get Parliament's feet to the fire and get them to vote for no-deal Brexit, which they probably will defeat, but as it were put their name to obstructing him in the no-deal Brexit he wants to get. We've got this last minute, as it were, meeting tomorrow in the northwest between the Taoiseach, surrounded by some of Ireland's top officials, the Prime Minister surrounded by some of his top officials, and there's a hope, presumably, that something can come out of that list of people put in one room. But I've been told, although the lights have not actually been flicked off yet on this deal, they are fading fast.
Gary, thanks very much indeed. Well, one of the MPs at this morning's meeting with the Prime Minister was Victoria Prentice. She joins us now from her Oxfordshire constituency. Thanks for coming on the programme, Victoria Prentice. Could you enlighten us, please? What did the Prime Minister say to you? What did he not say to you?
Well, it was quite a long meeting and a detailed meeting. We were there ostensibly to talk about what's going to go in our next manifesto. So it was wide-ranging, and we talked about things like social care, remember that, and education.
But did he tell you that no deal was off the manifesto?
Well, what he said, we talked extensively about what has been briefed and what he has said. And it was made very clear to us by him that we should listen to what he has said in the Commons this week when he said that no deal would be a failure of statescraft. And what Michael Gove said yesterday in the Commons, which made it really clear that this government is going hell for leather for a deal.
Right.
I came out of the meeting much happier and reassured that this Prime Minister is working extremely hard to try and land a deal.
But that's different to taking no deal off the table, isn't it? Are you reassured that he's taken no deal off the table for a Tory party manifesto in a forthcoming election?
Well, I can't speak for him, but what reassured me was that he was very sure, as I am, that no deal is not a destination, it's not a positive outcome, so why on earth would it ever be in a manifesto?
But it might happen. I mean, the EU is preparing for it. Dominic Cummings, his most important advisor, is briefing about it. So what makes you think it won't happen?
Well, it might happen, but that doesn't mean it would be a desirable outcome or one that this Prime Minister is seeking to achieve. I think we should listen more to what he says and less to what briefings say.
But are you happy with all these briefings coming out of Number 10 and ascribed mostly to Dominic Cummings? Are you happy that Dominic Cummings is effectively running your government's, your party's policy?
I just don't think he is. I've never met Dominic Cummings. I've never talked to Dominic Cummings.
You don't have to meet him to be told what he thinks.
Well, I get to talk to the Prime Minister, the boss, every so often. I'm in a very fortunate position and I can put my own and my constituents' worries to him directly. Right. I think that's a much better way of doing things.
And just very briefly, you're from a constituency that voted marginally to leave. I think it's 50.09%. I mean, literally divided down the middle.
We were one of the closest in the country.
Exactly. And if you have to run on a no-deal manifesto, that puts you in a very difficult position. How will you choose? I just don't think there's any chance of that. No deal is really not a destination. It's just the beginning of a conversation. I think we all need to really focus on what we mean by no deal, and then people will start to understand that it's not something that is desirable.